Okay, so we're live on Facebook and YouTube. We have a special show to end the day with. It's with a brother that I haven't really ever talked to, Michael Mejia. We're gonna bring him up here in a minute. Let me just double check and make sure everything's cool. Nope. Okay, here we go. All right. So we're gonna play. Michael is a poet. He is a conscious poet. So we're going to see a little bit of his work, and then I'm going to bring him on. So let's start with that. This is called Poetry, the Poetry of Consciousness.
We have been programmed by the indignities of the ego, pride, arrogance, greed, manipulation, desire in service of the self. These energies have been long held and have blocked the essence of our spirit, light. The virtues of the soul are intrinsic, not conditioned, not absorbed, but the fabric of our very being. Compassion, empathy, kindness, selflessness, love, unification with the intrinsic understanding of inextricable connectedness. Consciousness lives on a spectrum. The energy amassed in each living form is bound by the law of energy, creating a rhythm of patterns directed by the volume of light or dark, reflected as vibrational frequency, then transmitted into the external world as energy in motion. As physical and verbal action manifest, moving through the chamber of the mind as thought and the heart as emotion, a multitude of vibrational realities create a living experience. The dense nature of fear is experienced both piercing and acute, vibrating asymmetrical to the frequency of light, which is love. Collectively, we are transcending a third-dimensional reality governed by the law of duality and evolving into a fifth-dimensional reality where consciousness is no longer fragmented into two, but instead whose governance is the law of oneness. Homo sapien to Homo luminous. One world is dying while another world is being birthed. Don't judge it, just see it.
Bam. That was pretty deep right there. Very cool. Very cool. So let me pull Michael up. Let me get Michael up here. Let's get to know our brother. Let's see. There you go. We can hear you. There you are.
Hey.
Yeah. What's up, Michael Mejia?
How are you doing, Todd?
I'm doing real good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry it took me so long. I should have told you a long time ago to write to my wife. I set so many people to come on and I never follow through. It never happens. But here we are now.
Yeah, and I'm excited.
Yeah. In the poetry of consciousness. I am a poet. I don't call myself too many things, but I'm going to call myself a poet. I haven't done a lot of writing lately, but I've got a pretty big archive. But that was beautiful. That was very unique. It was very original.
Thank you.
And there's got to be a story behind it. Were you born this way, or did you have a traditional wake-up experience?
Yeah, from recollection, the very first poem I wrote was when I was in 4th grade. And we were asked to write a poem just write something for Mother's Day. And so I wrote a poem and I compared my mom to the rose, metaphorically. And I remember my fourth grade teacher came in the next day, and she had my poem in her hand, and she was just like, "You're a writer." And it still didn't click because I was just in fourth grade, ready to go play tetherball. Like, so I didn't really understand what that meant. And then it definitely got lost for a lot of years, and I became an athlete.
Mm.
And so I didn't really identify with writing by any means. And then I had actually suffered a very serious head injury in 2013, and that reignited the writing, and the poetry just started coming back.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So how long ago was that?
So 2013, I had the head injury.
All right.
And I would say probably 6 months to a year before the head injury, I was already kind of moving through some of the emotional and psychological aspects of spiritual awakening, but I didn't have any reference points because, I was still highly conditioned by
Right.
the world and just conceptuality. And so, but once I had the head injury, it full on triggered a physical Kundalini awakening, in the sense that just the energy was moving through different parts of the energy centers of my body. And I didn't even know what was happening. I thought it all had to do with just the head injury.
Yeah.
So, and then I think months later, one of my friends, she wrote me and she was like, "I know you had a head injury and I know that's all real." She's like, "But I think you're going through a spontaneous Kundalini awakening." And she sent me an article. And I remember I went to my neurologist, and when I was giving him specific symptoms, I was like, "I'm starting to see colors around people." And, I didn't know that was seeing energy fields and auras. And he was like, "I've been doing this for 30 years. That's not part of post-concussive syndrome." And so that's kind of when I started to delve into, a deeper understanding for what was happening to me. And then everything kind of started to open a little bit more.
Yeah. And you're pretty young. You look pretty young. I mean, what are you, like 32?
Yeah, just turned 34.
Okay. So, I mean, that's not young, but that's, most of the people that have been in these communities that I've been in, but I guess like attracts like, or, 45 to 55, 35 to 55. But, yeah. So how long did you feel the Kundalini happening, and how long was it after you had the head injury?
Right. So it was spontaneous. So along with just experiencing the regular symptoms of a concussion, I immediately, the energy was really clearing. It was clearing the stomach chakra, the solar plexus. And it kept getting stuck in my adrenals. And it just started causing a lot of physical pain, because it's like almost like it just accelerated the movement, but my physical body wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
And so I just started, everything happened at once. I started dreaming, astral projecting, seeing energy fields. I would experience the downloads in a very physical way. So I would wake up to like a blinding light radiating from my third eye while I was downloading frequency. And I would think that, like, oh my gosh, is the sun coming through? And when I'd come out of it and I'd open my eyes, it was still pitch black in my room. So I started like literally seeing the energy open up and then project into the physical. And then when specific chakras were clearing, I would see symbols project. So when the third eye was clearing, like psychological imprints, all of a sudden I would, like, when I'd come out of it or I'd wake up, I would still see the third eye symbol projecting. And so it just kind of like, I just started documenting and my dreams and putting them in a diary. And, it was intimidating at first, and I was really scared. And I remember I talked to a clairvoyant, and I had never really gone to one. And I went to her, and she was like, you're going through a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. And then she was like, don't worry. She was like, one of two things will happen. She's like, you'll either go crazy or you'll shift consciousness. And I started crying and I was like, I'm going crazy.
I was going to say, I hope you didn't tell people what was happening besides professionals. But
No.
the reason I'm asking you is because that's what I love about what I do, because you actually like get stuff while you're doing it and hearing it. And that's why I'm asking you too, because there are people that are, waking up in this manner now. And
Right.
more every day. So, part of what we try to do is share the experience so people can be exposed to that code. But so it would have been like 2011 for me. And I had a head injury, and I suffered post concussion syndrome for about 6 weeks.
Wow.
But when I got hit, now I didn't have any type of evidence, and I didn't know about this stuff then, but I had a couple of Kundalini experiences in my 20s. And I kind of shut it down because it scared the hell out of me. Right. And so anyway, but I didn't have anything like that happen. But what I did have was I got knocked out. I probably got up within 20 minutes. And then I went home, and I mean, I was pretty messed up. And then I went through this post concussion syndrome where you wake up and it's vibrating and, all that other stuff that goes with it. But something in me, the day it happened or the night it happened, I knew something altered in me. I knew that I was going to be fine. And so about, I don't know, maybe 2 months later, I was out, and all of a sudden I felt it coming. And because it had happened in my 20s, I knew what it was. I figured it was either that or I was going to have a seizure, because I'd had a history of seizures along the lines of your body couldn't deal with it. I was going through the same thing now in retrospect. But anyway, I sat in this chair, and it came in from the base of the spine and blew my head off, just total full blown Kundalini experience. Now, I didn't my awareness and everything, and my journey really didn't start with that, but that's how it went down for me. So there's two versions for anybody this might be happening to. They're not all the same, are they?
No. Yeah. And that's what's challenging is, can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can't see you.
Oh, let me see if I could
fix. All the girls are sending complaints. They're complaining because your face is no longer on the screen.
The camera shut off.
That's cool. That's cool.
I'm just, my brother's turning it back on. But yeah, I think with the different aspects of Kundalini awakening is that you never really understand, what's happening, and everyone is different. I mean, for me, I would talk to friends who they were going through Kundalini awakenings as well, but they weren't having as many physical symptoms. Theirs were more emotional and psychological.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, for me, just for people that are waking up, and for me, I wasn't even aware of anything probably for another 3 or 4 months. And I was just going through trauma, which is a lot of traumas, which a lot of people experience. Right. But mine kind of the shoe dropped and everything changed overnight, my life and everything. So, but now, as you went through this journey, were you able to confide in people? Did people tell you were crazy? Did your family kick you out and all that normal stuff?
I was actually really fortunate because my mother and my sisters are really connected, and my sisters have always been in touch with the spiritual dimension since I was younger. And I think that, I know that they had been waiting for me, because they had been, they're clairvoyant, they're clairaudient. And I was more conditioned by my external and my friends and some of my family. And so I was kind of indoctrinated into Western theology for a while when I was younger. So I viewed all of that as, intimidating and something that we don't talk about, and we don't talk about our dreams, and we don't talk about, hearing messages from spiritual realms.
Yeah.
But when I had my head injury and I started expressing to my sisters and to my mother what was happening, they just started laughing, and they were like, "Oh, cool! Yeah, we knew you'd come around."
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Now, in that regard, were they talking about ascension? Were they talking about any type of collective awakening, or that were they just talking about the world they lived in that they were waiting for you to meet them in?
They were more talking in lines of the world they lived in. I think that what was really interesting is when I started going through my awakening, it kind of felt like this paradoxical balance where I've always been real empathetic. So I was feeling energy while my sisters were seeing energy and receiving messages, audibly.
Yeah.
So when I started writing about the ascension and energy and the progression of the pain body and, what the psyche goes through as it purifies not just experiences from this lifetime, but we start seeing different lifetimes in our dreams. And
Yes.
are we back on? Do you see me?
Yeah. I've seen you for a while. You're good.
Oh,
You're
cool.
good.
This is my brother, by the way. That's Todd.
What's up, man?
He's the one that makes the videos.
Oh, it just went off again. It went gray screen though. It went gray screen. Are you guys on a broadcast software?
Kind of.
Okay. So a couple things then, right? So one of them is what the hell were you just talking about? Oh, okay. So I mean, did you research or were you told about the chakras? Were you, I mean, you speak as you know it well. Was that in retrospect? Was it shown to you direct without any books or anybody talking to you?
Right. Yeah. I experienced it first as a physical experience, and then I went out for reference points.
Okay.
Right. So for me, like I said, like I would literally start seeing whenever we'd sleep, right? Or whenever we have specific cosmic alignments, when we'd be going through a full moon, the blood moons, those blood moons kept me up till 5
I remember
in the
those. There was like 4 in 2018, wasn't there?
Yeah. And in 2018, because we subatomically, molecularly, everything's clearing. So I would stay up, not by choice, but my body would keep me up till 5 o'clock because I literally felt like I was on fire.
Yeah. You were burning.
The biggest experience that really, really solidified my understanding for the ascension was in 2014, a year after I had the head injury. I was clearing so much that, and that's one thing I wanted to say about clearing is, as human beings, we've been conditioned to reject our pain and to walk away from it. And think about it, like where one experience is too painful for us to recognize or acknowledge. When we go through the Kundalini awakening and as we all start shifting consciousness, when we're in our sleeping state and the shadow aspect, the pain body, the ego, when they go into rest, all of a sudden we're clearing collective aspects and individual aspects like at an accelerated pace. So we avoided feeling one experience that was too painful. Now at night, we're waking up from 72 experiences that were too painful.
Yeah.
150 experiences.
Now, did you know this is what you were doing when you were doing it, or did you pick that up later?
Yeah, I started understanding it because the more energy I would clear, the more I would see.
Okay.
Like visually, or
so there was a direct relationship, and
a direct relationship. And then, actually how I came in touch with your light and your work was Lisa Transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
And she definitely helped me understand. She was giving words to exactly what I was going through at the time.
Yeah. And you realize you probably weren't crazy. And if you were, there was 2 crazy people in the world. So then the poetry thing. So I'm like you.
Right.
When I was young, I read poetry and I wrote some poetry and, played the sport, just like you, played the sports, got away, came back. But when I woke up, I had a little flip phone and I started writing. I went on the streets by my own choice for a couple of years, and I spent all my time connecting. There was a lot of stuff that went through my body like you. I didn't have a lot of understanding of what was happening. but I knew something was going on because I had some divine stuff happen. But my point is I started writing because because I knew I needed to, and because it felt right and aligning. And a lot of it came out as prose, and most of it is poetry. And so I don't know. That was kind of like I don't know. That was like the 0 point or something. I don't know. That was like the lifeline, I guess. How about for you? Did you go get to a point where you said, you know what, I'm going to start writing this down in poetic form, or did it just start coming out?
Yeah. So it literally, it just started waking me up. So I'd be sleeping 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and I would wake up and it would just pour out. I mean, I was just like, I mean, the poetry, the piece you started with, I wrote probably a week and a half ago, and it probably was like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just started to understand that the more energy we clear, the more we open as a receptor for universal consciousness. And so the writing would come in, and then after I would write it and just honor the process, then I would step in conceptually, right, and go, oh yeah, that's right, you know, because I mean, I'm a big fan of quantum physics and Tesla and Einstein and the mystics and the prophets. So kind of just bringing all those worlds together. There's like an intellectual understanding for energy, but there's a lot of how the process comes and how it was all flowing and connecting. And I'm sure this is probably similar for you. I relate it to like kind of like the poems are alive. They're like spirits. They're conscious, just like we're conscious, trees are conscious, the sun. So I can feel when something of a higher vibrational rate enters me, I can feel the energy of it. Yeah. And then it starts formulating its own life.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. I can relate to like it was after I came off the streets after a couple of years, and I started making videos about 3 years after I woke up. And I remember because in those days, I haven't done it in a long, long time, like 5 years, but I used to watch the videos to try to pick up. It was almost like I was watching somebody else. I wasn't critiquing myself and all that, because they were all freestyle. They were all spontaneous. But it was weird because I would watch myself, and there would be different aspects of me, literally. Like one might be like a fervent preacher, and the next one might be like a calm, cool Buddha philosopher, and the next one be like a wild, crazy, long-haired Mexican who didn't get any sleep and drank too much beer the night before, you know. But there was a common thread in all of it, and it had to do with the spontaneity. And then later on, I started to speak to music, kind of like what you did there, and then a little bit of what I call soul speak, like kind of a rhythm or a phrasing. Not really a rap. Some people call it a rap, but it's not. And very little melody, but all of them pretty much, you know, have been like spontaneous. So what happens when you, a week and a half ago, write this poetry of consciousness? Do you write it down, then speak it, then put the production together? Or does somebody like your brother help you put the production together? How does that work?
Yeah. So typically, the poem comes first. Sometimes it's different, but typically the poem comes first. And then in my mind's eye, I kind of see the vision. So, you know, my brother actually, that was a bunch of B-roll from Hawaii. But like our last piece we did before that piece is called Star Spiraling.
Yeah.
And that one was really a cool experience because the poem was written probably like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But then when we got quarantined, we've just been filming everything in our living room right here. And so we literally, I saw the vision for it, and I told him like, half of my face needs to be slightly illuminated, right? To represent the light aspect of our essence. And then I said, and then half of it needs to be, you know, ambiguous and dark, where we can't make it out, because Star Spiraling is a poem about breaching dimensions. So when the consciousness starts expanding in the form, we literally, when we move from a linear state of consciousness into a multi-dimensional state of consciousness, that's when we start, you know, experiencing the higher and lower realms, and we start experiencing ourselves in multiple dimensions, multiple contexts. And so with the star spiraling, I knew that. So my brother just grabbed two pin-sized flashlights. So we put two right on the left side of my face, shot in my room with some blackout curtains.
Yeah.
And then he threw in the smoke and all the images.
Right
and
so we're gonna watch this one. We didn't set this up, but I asked him to send me 3 poems and he sent me 3, and this is the next one up anyway. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I got to see this. It reminds me of when my wife morphed into the goddess Kali, and half her face was black and half was white, and her tongue was down to here. That was a kind of a but I love the fact that you guys do this together too, because it's that energy of where two or more gather.
Yes.
You know, that alignment. So you guys must have a really special soul contract bond, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, let's play this and we'll come back and talk about, hang on, let me get this right. We'll come back and talk about it a little bit and talk about what's behind it, what you just explained, because that was a lot. You know, and I think that's an important part of waking up too, is the whole thing about, you know, that you are consciousness. You're not just the body, and you do have the ability to visit other dimensions and timelines and that type of thing. All right, here we go.
Stars spiraling from water to sky, bones to dust, dawn to dusk, man to mastodon, butterflies chasing the light of time back into empty space. The ocean splits as the blood of love bleeds from the soul of creation. Moses appears. He never left. As we move back into the dark, we remember that we have always been the light. Yeah, so the poem, how the visuals were really created in a very similar likeness to the way the poem was downloaded. And it was when the poem started coming in, I literally saw in my mind's eye this, when it starts with stars spiraling from water to sky, it's like everything moving in from 0 point, moving in from the void of nothingness, and creating and manifesting as galaxy, as multiverse. And then in order for the awakening, I saw everything reverse, because everything's moving back into 0 point.
Yeah, everything's moving backwards.
Right? So when all of a sudden the line where it's butterflies chasing, like literally it's like these butterflies manifest in the physical, and now they're moving back into the void. Everything's moving into the void. I love the visual of Moses as a young boy, because, that's consciously challenging us to move out of conceptual imagery. Yeah. Of how we've been conditioned to view Moses, view the Christ, view the Buddha. And so I think that with stars spiraling, something that I told my brother that was really important, and something that I knew needed to be conveyed, and something that I feel the spiritual communities, we can kind of bring a little more conversation and context around, is truly how dark the spiritual awakening can be. For me, I want to bring, we have the poetry of consciousness, and you could feel that vibrates really high, but we need to talk about when we're breaching dimension. We need to talk and give context and voice to those moments where we are in a fetal position, crying, holding our bodies because our bodies feel like they're going to explode.
Yeah.
Holding our head because psychologically we can't keep up with the amount of energy and images that are being transmuted. Holding our heart because we can't keep up with the amount of emotion that's being expressed.
Yeah. Holding our ass so we won't fly out of the roller coaster too.
Yeah. So I really started spiraling. I wanted, to really capture the darker aspects in understanding that the truth is, by universal law, there is no way back to the essence of who we are without moving through the fractal aspects that have accumulated.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm sitting. First thing I got to say is, dude, you're the bomb, and you and your brother got a symbiosis. I mean, it's like, you fit like that. So props to both of y'all. And so I see a lot of things coming, like it's like what you're describing. I think about I wrote like 1,000 memes in the first 2.5 years. And so I had the imagery. I didn't have the movement like you have on your videos. That would come later. But I remember I would get the picture and I would look at it and then I would just, boom, it would go. Just like you were talking about. But as I went back and looked at them, I still post them, post some of them, every couple of days when they come up on memories. And it was like, that was it. It was like the holy darkness. It was the pain and the suffering and in the pain and suffering, but seeing the light, like, how does that work? You know what I mean? And it was almost like a sandwich. You walk in the door and it's here's where I'm at. You're really vulnerable. You're in that fetal position, which is a powerful thing. And then you describe the journey of the darkness and the payoff.
Yeah.
The payoff of it. I think that's a great comment and idea. And we try to do that here, is talk about what we call darkness. But when we talk about darkness, you're talking about darkness in a way that it's respect and love and honor. I call it the holy darkness, know, and I get what you're saying. And I think a lot of people can relate to that and have kind of let go in the last year, at least from what I've seen on this show, and in the community. And it's okay to be in fetal position. It's okay to be in fear. It's okay for whatever it is. The only thing that's not okay or not, that doesn't behoove us, is to reject it and push it away. Because
absolutely.
Because as soon as we run full force into it and embrace it, the sting is over. And then you start having soulgasms, right?
Yeah. Well, and something that I've come to find is, you're right. And the other thing that's counterintuitive is when we're projecting what we're transmuting or what's surfacing. But when we fully honor and give complete attention to whatever fraction or fractal aspect of us is transmuting and finding balance, so that then the essence can take space and create form and expand. When we do that, it actually happens at an accelerated pace. It feels more painful because all of our energy is literally focused on, through, Eckhart Tolle says, the light of awareness, through the light of awareness, all of that energy, when it's not being expressed outwardly, is literally like breaking down and expanding around that energy. And so I always tell the people that I'm around, my friends, my family, feel deeply, but don't recreate ripples in the physical. Don't get stuck on, the loop. Don't create more timelines. Don't create more karmic exchanges. Just feel the pain, cry, go lay down, expand, and I think that's where we're at our best, is when we give ourselves to each feeling in each moment, and trying not to judge it, and just remembering that we're not going to stay in there forever. Typically after a couple of days, after we move through a specific purification phase, it lifts and we reach a higher state of light, and we can feel it. And then typically that's when more writing comes in, poems, and You know, you
Yeah.
actually, I read one of your poems this morning that I loved. And when I read it, I felt like it was a synchronicity, and the universe was like telling me,
That's it.
Michael, like, you're in alignment, everything's good. Like, you know, because I've never really done anything like this where I've talked about this. This is
Wow.
more publicly. Like for a long time, I just let the poetry, like I was like, the poetry's the voice. But you wrote a poem about basically the most noble thing we can do is honor our human aspect. Like that's what we're doing now. That was the context of the poem. And that spoke so deeply to me because we're moving into a deeper state of consciousness, but that deeper state of consciousness by divine order wants to express itself in physical form.
Absolutely.
So honoring the human aspect and the human journey is noble, and it's beautiful, and it's powerful. And we're in these bodies. And if we weren't meant to be in these bodies, we wouldn't be. And now light's just expanding in these bodies. And rather than experiencing the world from a dualistic perspective, we're now experiencing it from an expansive state of light. And I think that poem really spoke to me. And I read that you are a poet, and I love it. It's beautiful, powerful.
Thank you. So two things. One is I love that what you said about when you said that about the Eckhart Tolle thing. So that little that light, that opening is about like that big. Right. So it's kind of like you said earlier about 72 occurrences of trauma, and you clear them all in one fatal swoop. And okay, so like with that, to me, I remember seeing years ago, like when I was in my 20s, because I was reading philosophy, religion, all that stuff in the 20s. I just whatever. But so and there was this meditation where you would go into the shower and the water would go on top of you, and basically you would see the gray matter, the gray water, discolored water coming out of you, and you would cleanse, that kind of thing. And so as I was listening to you, I was thinking, it's more like a bathtub. You know what I mean? So it's like the bathtub when that whirlpool starts, and you're right. You get to that point of surrender. You surrender to the embrace. I mean, you're just like, and that doesn't mean it feels perfect to the human. It could feel like crap,
Death.
Yeah, it could feel like, well, yes.
It is.
And that's exactly what it is. I love the the French call the orgasm that little death or something like that, and that's what it's like. It's like the more we go, the more these little deaths have an orgasmic quality. My wife was trying to tell me about something that happened to her 2-3 days ago where she just like totally went to source, and it just happened, through a progression of elevations. And she said, it's kind of like when you're having a baby, you have this high level of pain and this high level of pleasure at the same time. And it's almost, if you think about the fact that we are in a duality and that we're integrating all dualities, all polarities, that would only make sense. Like the pain and the pleasure got to be the same, that I'm talking energetically.
No, yeah, absolutely. That reminds me of an experience I had that has helped me because truth be told, when I had the head injury and the Kundalini was going through, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. I was losing my mind because I had so many physical symptoms and they were nonstop. My mother would literally lay in bed with me because my migraines and my vertigo were so intense. It felt like my brain was flipping in my skull, but I got a glimpse at what's to come. And it's what's sustained me. And it's what's allowed me to remain faithful through the darkest aspects of the awakening.
Yeah.
And so in 2014, it was a year after the head injury. The symptoms were not subsiding. They were just getting stronger and more elevated. And I went to my parents and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like I've held on for a year because I love you guys and I don't want you guys to, but literally I can't do this physically, emotionally, psychologically. I'm just overwhelmed. And they were really upset. They were nervous. And I ended up going up to my room, and I started meditating to calm down. And as I was meditating, after about 20 minutes, my head started to move all on its own with my eyes closed, and I couldn't open my eyes because there was so much light shooting from my third eye. So I was trying to open them, but I couldn't. And I felt an immense amount of energy rush through my body. And it lasted for probably like 10 or 15 minutes. I came down the stairs, and my mom had a really bad migraine because she was stressed out over what I was going through. And without any thought, there was just a deep intrinsic feeling of, oh, I could take her headache away.
Yeah.
So she was laying down, I closed my eyes and I put my hand over her. And right when I put my hand over her, I started seeing green project with a heartbeat from my third eye. And right when I knew the headache was gone, intuitively, I lifted my hand and opened my eyes. And my mom opened her eyes at the same time and looked at me like her headache was gone. And I still hadn't told them about the transcendental experience I had just had. Within seconds, I started vomiting violently, and my Kundalini shot up my spine again. And it was coming with more fury than it's ever come with. And I was throwing up for about 30 minutes, and my parents were like, what's going on? And I told them, it's my energy. It's going up my spine again. And they wanted to call 911. And I was like, no, don't call. They're not going to be able to do anything. And I kept getting sick. So finally they called. The ambulance came, they took me in. And as I was going, I'm like, I literally can't move. I'm holding my back because it feels like my spine's just going to rip out of my back. As I get pulled into the hospital, by that point, it finally starts slowing down. The energy starts to subside. And I'm just laying there with my hands over my heart, exhausted. So my eyes are closed. And right when I start moving, they have me in like a little remote bed. And as I'm moving, all of a sudden I feel and I hear, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not me. I'm not afraid to die. Like, I'm in pain. Take me. Like,
Yeah, right.
you
Give me the
know?
help. Beam me up, man.
Beam me up, Scotty. So I open my eyes, and as I open my eyes, they're wheeling a woman that had to have been in her 90s. And when I looked over at her, all I could see was her fear, and she was shaking. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my goodness, I'm literally reading the energy that's permeating out of her heart chakra speaking to my heart chakra, and then my heart chakra is sending those messages up into my psyche and formulating thought.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden I started to feel her energy, and I could feel everyone's energy. And it lasted for about 2 days. After the second day, it completely lifted. So it was like, and this is how I expressed it to my parents at the time. It was like I was plugged into heaven's library. You could call it like the Akashic records. All of a sudden, the head injury, everything I had been through, it turned into a grain of sand.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I bore witness to the fact that I have done this a billion times in a billion forms.
Yeah. So, and what's cool about your story, it exemplifies energetically and literally what that point looks like. And I don't think that, well, I don't know. I think it's more something you have to experience and get to on your own. I think people can tell you, and you maybe can attempt it. But what I'm getting at is you got to the point of you're done. Right. I'm done. You know, I'm ready to go, whatever that means, just whatever, anything but this, right?
Yes.
And I had that, and I know, and I had that, but my point, and more than once. So there's many deaths, right? But the thing is it's when you hit that point that, you know, there's like almost like a void is created, and something's got to fill it. And obviously, you're like me, you're a thrill seeker. You like to do everything hard and fast. I've tried to get away from that in the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I had that experience too. And it was just like this understanding that literally the only place pure consciousness can expand is 0 point.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so by grace, right, and by law of the paradigm shift that the collective is just going through this, whether anyone wants to or not, this is a universal shift in consciousness, and we're all bound by this law. But for me, it was this, there's almost no greater point of surrender than when the universe has exhausted us into filling us back with our soul.
Yeah, but you know what's crazy? Yes, I totally get you, man. It's like I don't know. I can't have babies, but if I did, it'd be something like you, right? Birthing, but no, seriously. So it's like the universe itself
Right.
has exhausted. For
Yes.
me, that's how it was. And I remember like laying on a park bench, you know, sleeping on the park bench, and I remember I was at that point, you know. And you talk about the mental and the emotional and the physical, and I thought to myself when you were telling me I didn't go through that, but I did.
Yeah.
It was, but I just wasn't like, you know, I was clued in, but it was just me and the universe. There was nobody, there was no light worker community. There was no, everyone told me I was crazy and that whole 9 yards. But the point of, I don't want to say hopelessness because I don't believe in the word hope. So I can't believe in hopelessness, but more, it was more of the, it was exhausted. Like you said, everything, I was done. Like I couldn't think of anything else to do, no matter how strong my will was. And that's where, like you said, that's where things are birthed, not rebirthed, but like new universe, new planet, new person, new whatever.
Yeah. And how I understood it while I was going through it was when I had the head injury, like I'd been an athlete my whole life. So I went through layers of death from false identification. Like I'm an athlete, I'm a coach, I'm supposed to work with children until I die. I had coached for a decade. So I had went through all of that. So by the time the poetry came in and the writing, I had been stripped of so much identity that I saw very well that there was nothing in me that wanted to take on more identity. So even like, and I'm sure you understand this, there wasn't anything that could really hold me anymore, like, because the expansion was happening too fast. So poet couldn't hold me, spiritual teacher, spirituality, none of those things could hold. And I mean, even the word light is elusive, but it's one of the best words we have to experience this emptiness. You know, Adyashanti, he calls it emptiness dancing. And Mark Nepo, he's one of my great teachers. He's a phenomenal poet. If you get a chance, check out his poetry. But Mark Nepo calls it unlearning back to God. And once we start to realize that we've been conditioned to accumulate, recycle, and regurgitate, but really the greatest knowledge we can unlock is from within, and we can't access that knowledge until we unlearn.
That's great. That's a great way to put it. You know, it really is. Yeah. I don't know what to say to that. I mean, it's the I am soul. I mean, I was in the same way. You know, I remember doing one of the first videos, probably, you know, I started doing videos in like August of 2015. And I probably in the first 30 days, I did, you know, 40. Yeah, so I would just get out there. But one day I was walking to the store and it started raining, so I had to stand under this, you know, in a little business strip, and so I just flipped on the phone and I started channeling. I was like, "How do you find your soul, and how do you test your faith?" And I go on this diatribe, you know, and I was like, you know, take everything away, every single thing. That's where I was in my life. And I was starting to get stuff back. I'd gotten my own place. I had got my youngest kids back with me. I was starting to get on my feet. I'd been a couple of years into this experience. And for me, that kind of summed it up. For me, not for anybody else, because I share just as you share, just because that's what you're guided to do. But how do you find your faith? How do you test your faith? How do you find your soul? Take every single thing away, every belief, every single thing. Nothing's left. What do you got? That's all you got. That's all you need. That's it. You know?
Yeah, our next piece we're actually releasing this week for the next installment of the Poetry of Consciousness is it's on belief and faith.
Yeah.
So it's in alignment with what you're talking about, and in that piece we talk about how belief is obsolete. The age of belief is now died,
Yeah.
and we're stepping into the age of knowing.
Yeah.
And the age of knowing is intrinsic, and it's called on by law, by grace. And we're stepping into a place where what you articulated it perfectly is that we are starting to understand that all of these belief systems that transcend just religious or puritanical theology, but the belief systems that we're not good enough, or our childhood dictates the tempo for the rest of our lives. All of these are beliefs. So all of these energies that are inside of our psyche have held us back from experiencing our essence. And because we've been so afraid of uncertainty or stepping into our anonymity, we've unconsciously protected the very thing that continues to keep us suffering, which is loneliness, isolation, and the dichotomy of not experiencing ourself as the universe in static motion.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, being constrained. Like believing that we're in a quarantine. This is going to be so interesting to see how this goes, because we're getting to a point now that the consciousness itself, I hope I can say this right, is taking over. You can call it the higher self. You can call it, you can say it's the integration of higher self and human self. I don't know, but the consciousness is not rebelling, but it's pushing. It's asking questions. And this is getting bigger and bigger. Like, why can't I go down to the beach? Why do I have to wear a mask and put blue gloves on? Why do I have to stay 6 feet away from people? I mean, like, there isn't enough on the other side of the scales of justice to accommodate the bullshit, basically. And so I think in a healthy way, we're getting to this point. So I think it's gonna be really interesting to see how this thing plays out, because of the fact that this is a physical realm.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying, because to give context to the quarantine and to the specific timeline that we are all playing out individually and collectively, is the quarantine is, what I've found the most productive or effective for myself, or when I'm talking to people about consciousness moving and rippling into the physical right now, is that we have been given an opportunity, like a lot of us. Like, I went through a head injury, you went through a head injury. Now, collectively, I look at the universe challenging everyone to move inward.
Yeah.
And as well as I do, that the only space that we can enter for expansion is stillness.
Yeah.
And we have to enter the screams. We have to enter the psychological imagery and the emotional imprint. We have to enter those aspects in order to move through a natural progression. So one thing that I'm starting to see and find, like, I myself don't watch, like mainstream media or anything like that. But what I am starting to see, just on a collective and just even in my own family, the other day I walked into my mom's room and she was, her and my father were watching alternative news. And I was like, whoa, like, it's here, it's happening, like,
that's what I mean.
It's just like you said, it's expanding. And I know that we've felt sort of this chrysalis phase, right? Where we've been in the spirit's been an embryo, and now it's starting to manifest. And what's on the other side of this quarantine, I feel like it's the new earth. I feel like it's happening.
Absolutely.
It's here, and it can't be slowed down. And like you said, I haven't seen people just on all levels of the fraction right now, just questioning and looking disoriented.
No, and that's what's weird, man. I mean, this is a really great point. So if you look at America, are you in the country? Are you in the States?
Yeah, I'm in Southern California.
Oh, you're in Southern California. Whereabouts? LA?
I'm in Rancho Cucamonga, probably
Okay.
like
I know
45
where,
minutes from Los Angeles.
yeah, I know where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We stayed out in Hemet
Oh yeah,
in
that's
August.
30 minutes
So,
from you.
yeah. So, okay. So, like, okay, let's just take this one example.
Right.
All right. And let's remember that not everybody is thinking like the light worker community is thinking or talking about it or seeing those posts.
Right.
So, money. Now, you've been around, I've been around long enough to know that in this country, 3 out of 4 households, whatever those households may look like, are paycheck to paycheck.
Yep.
And you got a boatload of people out there who make cash money, such as waiters and bartenders and contractors and independent people, house cleaners and so on, that aren't working.
Right.
Now, $1,200 isn't going to make a dent in that. And that's not a political statement. I'm just trying to make a point. And that point is
right.
Why isn't everybody going ape shit?
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, what is happening here? You know? And because they aren't freaking out, they are calm. And I'm wondering if, like what you described and what other people have gone through in terms of that surrender moment, right, is when it happens. To me, it feels like we're in the bathtub and that thing's getting faster and faster and about to make that noise when the final bit of water goes down. And I'm just wondering if maybe we've done enough work that it's going to be smooth, that it's going to be seamless, almost transitionless, you know?
Right.
But then again, I don't know anything. So, I mean, I'm just curious as to what it's going to look like.
Well, no, but I love what you're talking about. I think that one thing that we know and we all see that's now clearly and physically visible that doesn't require belief or faith is that one world is dying while one world is being birthed. Yeah. And when we talk about the energetic laws and universal laws, anything that was created by the energy of duality, by law and moving through a new paradigm, has to either be reconfigured or it has to be dissolved and restructured. Yeah. So because we know that, how this is all going to play out, like, I mean, just all around the world, you look at the protests, record-breaking protests in Hong Kong, the yellow vests in France,
leading up to all this,
all of this, right?
That all triggered
this moment is you see these power structures whose structural elements were rooted in fear and governing by control. By universal law, those are dissolving. Yeah. And so what we know, and I'm sure some of the clairvoyants have seen, but what we know inside is that everything has to be birthed anew, and it has to be created from the vibrational frequency of love and oneness in service of humanity and not in service of self.
That's right.
And so when I look at what's happening right now, rather than kind of projecting an endpoint, what I'm just understanding is I'm watching everything dissolve at an accelerated pace. I'm watching people question for the first time things that have been long held that we've been conditioned to not question, governmental structure, religious structure, even going into the homes and questioning how we've been conditioned by the familial archetype, family, status, work, money, the monetary system. Everything that was created by the law of duality is being called to order. Yeah. In balance.
Nothing's getting out alive. Let go or be dragged.
Yes. I love that.
Hey, do you ever do any poetry slam or freestyle?
No, I've never done freestyle.
I've done let's see. I've probably done it 3 or 4 times. Like either on a live but never anything real fluid. So, but I know a few poets, man, and I think that'd be kind of cool to do like a Zoom with maybe 6 or 8 poets and just see what you come up with, or just share the poetry.
I love that. I would love that. And even I would love to. We could collaborate, merge voices. We could collaborate on a poem.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because yeah, when I came off the streets and I got a computer, so it was like 2 years into it. So I was writing all this poetry, right? And so I started like putting it out in groups everywhere, and poetry groups and ascension groups and all that stuff. But I met this dude from India, and he's a poet, man. I mean, a real poet. he's he's he runs an international poet thing, and he's a really cool dude. His name's Gop. So yeah, I used to do kind of, collaborate a little bit with him. He wrote this poem called the Smiling Messiah about Krishna. And by that time, I was doing stuff like you and your brother. I'd put out, I don't know, probably 8 or 10, what I call soul speaks. So I would do a little spoken word, then I started doing a little rhythm and rap and very little melody. And so I'm like, dude, that's the greatest poem I've ever heard in my life. And it is to this day. And so I was like, you want to make a Soul Speaks? Because I want to start producing other people. He's like, no, you do it. And I ended up doing it with some DJ Screw, DJ Screw instrumental. But I haven't done any of this stuff in a long time. And I see my role long term, as Soulology expands and continues to expand, is to produce more. I like the production part of it. I like putting stuff together. It's just fun, man. I mean, it's I don't know. It's like, to me, it's like whether I'm doing it or somebody else is doing it, there's something about that intuitive, creative, spontaneous, like you said, you wake up, you write it, it's done, right?
Yeah.
There's something about doing that is better than any sacred book. Like it's like, I always say, adding more frequencies to an ever expanding vibration, because that's basically what we are. If
Absolutely.
we're reflections of the universe, then anything that we put together, even the remixes, right? That's why I love people that take like old music and they'll put it with a contemporary DJ and mix stuff up, just mix different genres. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I love that. No, and I wanted to just express that one of the reasons I wanted to, when I started talking about this publicly, with the exception of the poetry that's been out, is I was really drawn to your energy because your humility and your kindness and your love for other people is really palpable and tangible. And you just create a really safe space. And I've been following you and Morgan for probably like a year or so, maybe even more. And I'm just really, both of you have been instrumental in everything I've done. So I really was excited to connect, because you do have the spirit of a brother, and you bring everyone in and you welcome everyone, and your energy. I just love what you both are doing, and yeah, that would be exciting. We should totally create a poem together.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, man. That's cool. Man, I don't know what to say, but because I used to talk about, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and obviously we're all kind of going through something right now. But I did find I did some research, and I found the best video editor out there for free, open source, and I've been playing with it. And I really want to get back into, I'm really big into sounds and music. I mean, I did a lot of stuff. I did about almost 100 Soul Speaks, what I call music video production. Yeah. If you go to YouTube, Soulology One Studios channel, and then playlist is Soul Speaks 5D music videos, something, you'll see it. But yeah, I produced some other people. I did my own stuff, and it's all there, I mean, I showed my ass a few times, and but I think that's what it's all about. Collaboration and co-creation seems to be a huge part of this new earth frequency that you're referring to, that we're stepping into. And the more, and I've always been a big believer, you talk about what that production that you and your brother are going to come out with, belief, faith, that faith expands as you expand. Faith expands as you utilize it. Yes. As you put it into motion. Faith is not stationary. Faith is when I woke up, I looked up the word, and I found the meaning that meant the most was transitive verb, trust and believe. And I didn't even know what a transitive verb was, but I knew that it was motion. And so that's what I see from these collaborations, like you and your brother are doing. That's a powerful, powerful thing. and then you start adding more into it,
Thank you.
Yeah, right on. So let's collaborate again. And we'll there's some things we can do. I'll talk to Morgan. She handles she's the producer. but if I tell her, hey, I want to do some stuff, we'll still do our shows. We'd love to have you and your brother on on Soul Speaks 5D, but also we could play around and do some stuff, with music and some other poets and just see what happens. I got plenty of footage. I mean, I got like 5,000 hours and a lot of it's music. I downloaded a lot of other people's music and poetry, and that's why I was asking about the broadcast software, because I just am now getting equipped again to be able to utilize it. And I would do these, I don't know if you ever saw them, but I would do these playlists. Basically, I would just go live with the broadcast software and I would play clips from the interviews, and I would play music from, friends around the world, and do some stuff on my own, and so what I wanted to do was be able to, because I'd never done it, was be able to pull people in and do the broadcast with me, right? Like pull you in and pipe in the sound to you, and so now I think I'm there.
Oh, I would love that.
I think I'm there.
Yeah.
So
that's definitely. I love everything that I love creating the poetry films. I love writing, but I don't know if this is the same for you, but the thing that absolutely makes me feel so alive is when I'm reciting.
Yeah.
I could feel.
Can you recite one now?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull one up.
Let's recite one now. Let's
see here.
I thought I had it. Let's see here. I mean, okay, so everybody knows he's got videos, and they are, I think you actually have 2 channels. Do you have 2 channels? The Poetry of Michael and, oh no, it's the Poetry of Michael.
Yeah, it's everything's the Poetry of Michael with no spaces. So I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
Yeah, and I tagged Poetry of Michael in the announcement. So if anybody wants to find it, or if you need it, just hit me up.
This is my most recent poem I wrote. So doesn't have a name yet. We enter the physical, and upon arrival, our sight is taken. Our knowing becomes replaced with questions. These questions hold secrets. These questions are holy. We must not resist the lover or the friend, the mother or the enemy, for in truth, all are messengers. The splendor of love and the bitter taste of pain become our lessons. Tracking our tears, we forge a path back into the invisible. Alchemists, swimming in our brokenness, waiting for the scent of our spirit to awaken our remembrance. If the purpose of pain is to lead us back to love, then pain is sublime.
Damn. I was going to say something, but I'm not saying anything till I've practiced a little bit more.
Oh no, I would love to. I love your poetry. I would love for you to recite.
I'm listening to you. I started to pull something simple up, and yeah, man, I don't know, man. Your stuff is I don't know. I can't put a word to it, but I guess what it is it's like like when you were saying that one, it brought me back to one, and I can see the meme, and it brought me back to a piece I did that talked about that, where pain became my friend, and suffering transforms to success. I mean, it's the same thing. It's that place that you talked about earlier, where you just say, I'm done. Like I've got nothing left, and yeah, I'd love to, we're going to have to do something. And I know some other ones, and I actually had talked to him about it a couple of months ago, right before all this stuff went down. But yeah, we'll do it. We'll
Yeah.
definitely do it. And yep, we'll talk about this. We set
Sounds
the
good.
intention. Yeah. You're a powerful brother, man. Best to you and your brother and all your loved ones. All blessings to you. Endless
Thank you so
gratitude.
much, Todd.
Yeah,
Thank you
man.
for having me. I'll see you soon.
Yeah. We'll do it again. No doubt. All right.
All right. Take care.